did you make the decisions which posts were most egregious to highlight or flag, or were there other people telling you which posts to go and express concern about?
Congressman, I'll say in general, we were lifting up examples of content that we felt were violating.
Right, when you say we, I just want to know which human beings were involved in deciding, like, this Leonardo DiCaprio meme had to go.
In general, we were discussing specific pieces of content when we were discussing.
Again, I know you guys love pronouns, but we is not what I'm looking for. I'm looking for the names of the people.
Congressman, I'm not authorized to.
Well, you wrote an email on April 21st, 2021. We remain concerned that YouTube is funneling people into vaccine hesitancy. This concern is shared at the highest, and I mean highest, levels of the White House. So we'd like to continue a good faith dialogue here. I'm on the hook for reporting out. Who were you on the hook for reporting out to?
Congressman, I can't recall who specifically I was referencing in that document.
Because you kind of just strike me as a functionary. I don't really think you were making these decisions. I think that these people that you say the highest levels of the White House, when you say the highest, and I mean the highest levels of the White House, who are you referring to? Without using the word we.
Congressman, I can't recall specifically who I'm referencing.
Well, when you say are you talking about President Biden?
Congressman, I don't think it should be a surprise that the administration was focused on the issue of presenting authoritative information.
By the way,
about
I find your testimony terrifying, but incredibly intellectually honest. Because you've come here and you've taken the position, look, you know, in the White House, people are always trying to shape how information is received. They do it with the New York Times, you've seen it on the West Wing, and I think a lot of Americans see a distinction between powerful White House officials trying to shape a news story in the Washington Post and then trying to shape what all of America and the world can see in the digital information space. But you say there's no distinction there, and I think that's honest. It scares the hell out of me, but that seems to be your testimony, right?
Congressman, these platforms are making hundreds of millions of algorithmic editorial decisions a second. And those algorithmic decisions,
I get it. I just don't want the White House participating in them. I get that to have social media companies, there are all these decisions that get made about what content rises and falls. What we have a problem with is when the United States government is putting their thumb on the scale. Now, you said there were no threats and there were no consequences. Was there pressure? Did you put pressure on social media companies?
Congressman, we certainly raised areas where we had questions about their policies or concerns about their enforcement.
Would you categorize that as pressure, yes or no?
Congressman, I can't speak to how they interpreted my conversations.
Well, I can, because there's an email about it. Nick Clegg sends an email. The title is Andy Slavitt Podcast, and he asks people at Facebook, can someone quickly remind me why we are removing, rather than demoting or labeling, claims that COVID is man-made before May? And the reply to that email is, and I quote, because we were under pressure from the administration. We shouldn't have done it. So were you part of that pressure campaign?
Congressman, again, having not seen the document, I can't speak to who they're referencing or what they're referencing. All I can say is—
well, Mr. Slavitt, were you a part of that pressure campaign?
I don't believe we were applying any undue pressure on social media companies. I don't think they interpreted it that way.
Well, in writing they have. Mr. Chairman, I seek to enter into the record the email where the people at Facebook are saying, okay, well,
objection,
fine, it exists, it's part, you know, it's out there. And Mr. Slavitt, there's another email, which I'm sure the Democrats would object to having considered, where a Facebook employee says, just got off an hour-long call with Andy Slavitt. He was outraged, not too strong a word to describe his reaction, that we did not remove this post, which was the third most highly ranked in the data we sent him. That was a Leonardo DiCaprio meme. That was a joke. Were you guys trying to get jokes removed?
Mr. Congressman, thanks for asking. I'll try to explain it really briefly. If Facebook, by their own policy, had put something on their website which said 250,000 people are dying every year from the vaccine, that would undoubtedly have violated their policy.
Okay, well, let's go to true information. Hold on, let's go to true information then. Because in another Facebook document, they say, quote, the Surgeon General wants us to remove true information about side effects. Mr. Flaherty, should true information be removed?
Congressman, I can't speak to what they're.
Can't even speak to whether or not we should censor the truth because they don't like where it leads. I see I'm out of time, Mr. Chairman. I yield back.
Yields back. The gentlelady from California is recognized. Ms. Sanchez.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. You know, it has not escaped my notice that there is information that is specifically being excluded from the record because it's inconvenient to the narrative that one side is trying to sell. They're trying to say that there was all this coercion and that the government was forcing people to do things when the witness testimony is contained in the transcripts that you will not allow to be entered into the record. Mr. Flaherty was asked about the emails, and he said, I can't testify as to how the emails were interpreted, but the evidence of how they were interpreted are in the transcripts that you won't allow into the record. Why will you not allow the witness testimony? These are all the people that received the email, because you want to pick and choose certain things that were said and not allow the full context in which they were stated to be entered into the record, which I think is incredibly disingenuous, and it's misleading, and it's purposefully misleading because you want it to fit the narrative that you are trying to sell. Of course, the government isn't allowed to threaten Americans from engaging in First Amendment rights, but today Republicans are saying that the government can't even express an opinion unless that opinion is one that MAGA adherents agree with, which is completely a ridiculous proposition. There is a difference between expressing an opinion and threatening somebody to believe it. The only threats that I see today are coming from across the aisle against our government's ability to protect its people. Mr. Seligman, the government is entitled to speak for itself, correct?
Correct.
The government is entitled to inform, to persuade, and even to criticize private speakers, correct?
Correct.
So government actors like the White House, they're allowed to express opinions because they have a First Amendment right as well. They can encourage Americans to take steps to protect their health and safety, for example.
Correct.
And isn't it true that throughout our history, presidents have expressed their opinions about the welfare and the safety of the American people?
Yes.
I want to walk through a few examples of the government expressing an opinion or encouraging Americans to take certain actions, because according to the Republicans, those moves are somehow an affront to conservatives. Mr. Seligman, is it a First Amendment violation for the government to encourage healthy young people to serve in the military or to go into some other public service like the Peace Corps or AmeriCorps?
No, it is not.
Is it a First Amendment violation for the government to start an awareness campaign telling adolescents that, you know, they shouldn't eat Tide laundry detergent pods as part of a social media challenge?
No, it is not.
Is it a First Amendment violation for the government to encourage medical professionals to receive training on signs of sex trafficking?
No, it is not.
And the government can share those opinions and encouragements with social media companies, or other companies for that matter, to promote its ideals of wellness and safety. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
So, for example, if the government was aware of content spreading online promoting child sex trafficking, the government could tell Facebook about this content, especially since promoting sex trafficking on these sites is against the company's own policies. Isn't that right?
That is correct.
And the government could flag for YouTube that kids are facing life-threatening complications after watching videos of teens eating Tide detergent pods and deciding to ingest those pods themselves.
That is correct.
Would such conversations between government and private companies constitute coercing these companies to take specific actions?
Not unless any adverse consequences were attached to it.
Okay, and to date, have any of these, to your knowledge, have any of these companies sued the government for coercion?
Not
or
to
for
my knowledge.
retaliation?
Not to my knowledge.
For failing to do something that the government suggested?
Not to my knowledge.
And the First Amendment also allows members of Congress to speak out about their own opinions, correct?
Correct.
Even if other individuals might find their opinions rude or offensive?
Correct.
And members of Congress frequently exercise that right in things like press interviews, correct?
Correct.
If anyone is trying to silence speech, it's congressional Republicans who are fear-mongering, they're threatening social media companies not to collaborate with the Democratic White House and trying to prevent the White House from saving lives. What we are doing here today, no, what you are doing here today is dangerous and manipulative. It's trying to convince the American people of falsehoods and conspiracy theories that have no basis in fact. Make no mistake about this one thing, allowing these wild conspiracy theories to spread unchecked is only because you guys are seeking to strengthen Donald Trump's re-election bid. Let's just call it what it is. And with that, I yield back my time.
Thank the chairman, and I thank our witnesses for being here.
Save lives and prevent them from dying of a novel virus that killed millions of people. But as we heard today, there is a lawsuit against the U.S. government for allegedly colluding with social media companies to censor conservative speech online, a case that has now reached the Supreme Court. My colleagues across the aisle favor the position that the government must be forbidden from communicating and collaborating with social media companies. Well, I disagree. Holding that opinion is acceptable, yet clearly we're here so Republicans can influence the justices, as the ranking member said, before this upcoming case, and that's what's unacceptable. To wage an inappropriate court influence scheme under the cover of oversight and impugn men who did their job and did it well is not just improper, it's actual weaponization of the federal government. So this begs the question, are we going to be launching an investigation into our own sham subcommittee? Because that's the weaponization of the federal government. Here we are attacking civil servants who work to keep America safe. That's clear based on the chairman's question line that was designed to bully rather than seek actual information directed at a public servant who was communicating the best scientific information available at the time. We all have comms directors. We know they're not experts, they're communicators. Instead of using their public megaphone to suggest people put bleach in their bodies to fight COVID, Mr. Slavitt and Mr. Flaherty clearly tried to save actual lives amid a global pandemic using sound medical and scientific methods. And they did just that. Numerous studies show that millions of lives were saved because of their work. And, you know, we're not hearing one Republican say that today, but it doesn't make it any less true. Another thing we haven't been hearing today is that there are other legitimate interests for government to engage social media companies, and barring such communications could leave us vulnerable if our election systems are attacked, for example. In Florida, voter suppression is a real concern. Citizens in my state overwhelmingly, for example, said in 2018 that they wanted to restore voting rights to felons. Sadly, over the next 4 years, rather than help our citizens understand Florida's complicated voter eligibility rules, Republicans instead resorted to intimidation and anti-democratic prosecutions. My fear is social media platforms could be used to confuse or intimidate voters. In those cases, why would we stop governments from sharing these legitimate concerns with such powerful, wholly unregulated companies? So, Mr. Seligman, could prohibiting communications between government officials and social media platforms further disenfranchise voters whose communities already face voter suppression? Briefly.
Yes.
Oh, thank you. We've seen the power of one individual like Rudy Giuliani encourage intimidation and violence against election workers. What would happen if social media platforms were amplifying those threats or triggering them?
They would become more severe.
Could you see a ban on such communication between government and social media platforms leading to increased violence against election workers, for example?
Absolutely.
The bottom line here is that this is a Hail Mary of a hearing designed to improperly influence the Supreme Court. And it puts two good men who saved many lives through a blizzard of baseless and distorted accusations and innuendo. Witnesses from the social media companies repeatedly confirm that nobody in the government ever coerced or threatened them to take action, but Chairman Jordan refuses to let the public see the transcripts or videos of their interviews. He's covering it up, which has been repeatedly obvious during this hearing, because for the first time in my 20-year career in Congress, I have never seen the majority not allow introduction by unanimous consent of information into the record for a committee hearing. That's what we should be investigating here today. And Mr. Chairman, I ask unanimous consent to enter into the record the full email chain dated March 4th, 2021, following up between Amazon employees and White House employees, which shows that Mr. Slavitt and Mr. Flaherty only asked for a meeting with Amazon to understand Amazon's policies, not make specific requests about content or censor any books. And I also ask unanimous consent to enter experts from the committee's April 16th, 2024 interview with the Amazon employee who received this email, in which the employee explains that that Amazon had been working on policies regarding vaccine-related books on Amazon for weeks before Mr. Slavitt's email.
Object.
Objection being raised to the second part. Again,
Okay,
I don't want to give a roadmap to other
trying to
witnesses we plan on
explain
calling. We
the
will release all that when we've done our,
Gentlelady's
complete our
time.
investigation.
Okay,
Gentlelady's
Mr. Chairman,
time.
right.
I'll give you extra 10 seconds.
Okay. What we're trying to do is introduce into the record the email that ensures that we have an opportunity to...
We said fine to that.
Okay, and then the interview with the Amazon employee who received this email.
We're not going to release the
In
transcript.
which the employee explains
we complete
that
the
Amazon had been
investigation.
working on policies regarding vaccine-related books on Amazon for weeks before Mr. Slavitt's email. Those are connected. Those two things are important information to highlight
We will release the
the
email.
obvious evidence that what the two gentlemen
The time from
were
the
doing
gentlelady
has
has
nothing
expired.
to do with
The
what
chair
you're
now
accusing them of.
recognizes the gentleman from Kentucky for his 5 minutes.
I yield back.
I yield to the gentleman from Ohio.
I appreciate the gentleman yielding. Professor, earlier, about an hour ago, Mr. Slavitt, in his, I'm reading from his written testimony, but I believe he said it in his oral testimony as well. He had this statement: to my knowledge, no one within the administration ever sought to make decisions for Facebook or any other social media company over their content moderation. Is that an accurate statement made by Mr. Slavitt?
That is not what I've seen in all the correspondence that I've reviewed.
You stand by that statement, Mr. Slavitt?
Yes, I do, Mr. Chairman.
So the administration never sought to make decisions for Facebook or any other social media platform over their content moderation.
To the best of my knowledge, certainly
To the
true.
best of your knowledge, it's the third day. Clark Humphrey, who worked with you all right? Ms. Humphrey worked with you guys? Is that Ms. Humphrey worked
Yes,
with you?
that's accurate.
She sends an email, wanted to flag the below tweet, wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP. That's not trying to influence social media company over their content moderation?
I think the statement that I said was that we didn't choose to make decisions for social media companies. I didn't say that there weren't correspondence or weren't occasions when they weren't trying to influence social media companies. And I think social media companies did a admirable job telling us when they disagreed. And I think those were
What is it,
important public
take down
dialogue.
this tweet ASAP? If that's not trying to make a decision for the social media company, what is it?
You know, I don't think she was ordering them to take anything down.
Well-
And I don't know the context of the entire conversation, but if you have documents to
Can
share,
you
which
keep an eye
indicate
out
that,
for tweets in this same genre? What was that?
I wasn't a party to that email, so I don't know. what was
Is
intended.
that trying to impact the content moderation decisions at Facebook or at Twitter or any other social media platform?
I'm sorry, did you say, can I see the full email, please?
I'll read it to you. Wanted to flag the below tweet, wondering if we can get moving on the process for having it removed ASAP.
I'm not sure I know the context. I wasn't a party to the email.
I just don't see how your statement squares with the actions that the
I
administration
think you-
took on day 3 with someone who worked in your worked with you guys.
I
How about
never-
this one?
Okay.
How about this one? Our YouTube trust and safety team is working to finalize a new policy to remove content that could mislead people on the safety and efficacy of vaccines. We would like to preview our policy proposal for you and get any feedback you have. So now they're asking on the front end, are you okay with the policy? Is that trying to impact and make decisions for social media companies about content moderation?
To make decisions? No.
They're trying to get an okay from you on the front end? And you're not having an impact on their social media platform content decisions?
As I interpret it, this was a interaction where a dialogue, and I don't know the entire context of the dialogue, but it
They're
sounds
asking
like the social media
permission. They
company.
want your feedback, and
was-
you've said,
It sounds like part of a dialogue about what constituted consistency with their policy. That's far different, in my opinion, Mr. Chairman, from someone making a decision on their behalf.
okay,
I don't know the
Mr.
occasion.
Flaherty, in your opening statement, you said something that I just found astounding. Twitter's new owner abandoned all its prior policies related to COVID misinformation over a year and a half ago. That decision was Twitter's to make, and I'm not aware of any adverse actions against Twitter in response to it.
Congressman, I'm not aware of any adverse government actions taken against Twitter in response to that change.
8 different federal agencies have went after Elon Musk and Twitter since that happened.
Congressman, I am no longer in government.
Department of Justice is looking into the fact that he hired too many Americans at SpaceX, FEC, SEC, FAA, NLRB, U.S. Attorney for the Southern District of North, and even the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service have went after him. And I haven't even got to the big one. FTC sent 12 letters, first letter asking right after the Twitter files, Mr. Musk, who are the journalists you're talking to? And you said in your opening, you said in your testimony that Twitter's new owner, I'm not aware of any adverse actions against Twitter in response to it. Literally, one of the most ridiculous things I've heard. Every agency you can imagine went after this guy because he's advocating for free speech in the First Amendment. You stand by your statement?
Congressman, I do stand by the statement. I can't.
You weren't aware of any of that? You weren't aware that the FTC sent 12 letters, and the first letter said, we know you're talking to 4 journalists. 2 of them testified in front of this committee twice. And we want to know who else you're talking to. Asking someone who are the journalists you're talking to, direct attack on the First Amendment. And you say nothing's happened, no adverse actions against Twitter in response to what he's done.
Congressman, again, I'm here to speak about my experience in government and interacting with social media companies. I left the government in June of 2023. I can't speak to this, and I certainly
This happened before that.
Reclaiming my time, these sound like mafia tactics when we send every 3-letter agency known to the U.S. government after Elon Musk when he comes out.
The government has the right to engage with private speakers to inform, advocate, persuade, criticize, as long as government officials do not actually coerce those private speakers or threaten to take action against them if they don't do what the government wants. Is that a fair summation of the law on this point?
That's correct.
And are you aware that 45 Republican House members submitted an amicus brief in Murphy versus Missouri?
I am.
And are you aware that this brief repeatedly alleges that the federal government, quote, coerced social media companies into taking certain action?
I am, and I believe the brief does not substantiate that claim.
I've looked at the actual transcripts of interviews with social media companies, and the transcripts that the majority has refused to not even, never mind release, but actually just allow into the record, also does not substantiate the claim by those individuals that signed on to this amicus brief. I don't know, are any of our witnesses lawyers? All right, Mr. Sawicki, are you familiar with the rules of professional responsibility, right? That all of us, as members of bars, must take as an oath, correct?
Yes?
And one of the rules of the professional responsibility is the rule of candor to a tribunal. Is that correct?
Yes?
Okay. And broadly speaking, that rule requires attorneys who present information to a court to disclose all relevant factual evidence. Is that correct?
Yes?
Okay. Even if the evidence is contrary to their argument?
That's my understanding, yes.
Right. You also cannot use false evidence. That's correct. Anyway, the witness after witness has straightforwardly said that the coercion, the witnesses in these transcripts that are not being released, repeatedly say that coercion did not happen. Let's take a look at what they actually said. In June 16, 2023 interview, the committee asked a YouTube employee, at any point when you were doing these collaborations with government agencies, was the government agency coercing YouTube in any way to participate in those relationships? The witness's unqualified one-word answer, no. The witness then said that YouTube's actions were voluntary and in line with YouTube's priorities. Mr. Seligman, do you agree that this is evidence that the government's engagement with YouTube was voluntary and not coercive?
Yes.
Are you aware that this testimony was not in the Republicans' brief?
Yes.
In June's 22nd, 2023 interview, the committee asked a Google employee whether any U.S. government official ever threatened any Google employee with adverse actions if Google refused to take any particular action. The witness plainly stated that he was not aware of any such request. Do you agree that this is evidence, sir, that the government did not threaten Google into taking any actions?
Yes.
Are you aware that this testimony was not in the Republicans' brief?
I am.
And another Google employee was asked in a June 26, 2023 interview whether they had any information about collusion between the federal government and Google to censor speech. And the witness replied, In my experience, Google, across its range of services through the years, has consistently made its own independent decisions with regard to what policies, practices, or product development it designs. Mr. Seligman, do you agree that this is evidence that Google makes its own independent decisions without coercion by the government?
Yes, I do.
And are you aware that this testimony was not in the Republicans' brief?
Yes.
You know, I can go do this as well with Meta vice presidents in June of 2023 interview, which wasn't in the brief, a May 16th interview with another Meta employee. When asked, to your knowledge, has anyone in the FBI or State Department or any other government agency ordered Meta to take down an account page or content? And his response to both was, not to my knowledge. What I've just read was just a small number of the universe of statements made by witness after witness stating that the allegations made by the majority does not hold water. And yet we are only hearing sometimes a portion of a sentence, not even the complete sentence, which would include the question, the can, as well as the punctuation point at the end, to recognize that it was a question and not a statement. When a party is made aware of evidence that is contrary to what they presented in court, do you think that that's something that they should share?
Gentleman respond.
Yes.
I yield back.
I'm the gentlelady inspired. The gentlelady from Florida is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Flaherty, what was your official title during your time at the Biden White House?